Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart. And that is getting lean, mean, and ready to... cream?
Yeah, they had us the first half, I'm not gonna lie.
For anybody who's been watching me over the last couple of years, you probably know that I am pretty deep now into my fitness journey. So I want to share with you guys what I have learned over those last couple of years. I want to share what has worked for me, some realistic expectations to set, some small tweaks that you can make to improve your life, and of course to dispel some of the many fitness myths out there. I would first like to preface a couple things here. I am not a certified nutritionist nor a certified personal trainer, or really technically any other qualifications. But I was able to lose about 60 pounds in the last couple of years using tons of online research, as well as tips from my good friend Dean, who's a certified nutritionist and personal trainer. As you can see by these photos, he has a pretty good resume. He also actually helped me out with this script and gave me a few tips and things to add in it. So I put a link down to his PT website as well as his Instagram. If you guys want to check him out, he does do some online coaching. Would highly recommend it if you're just getting started. My wife is also a therapist who specializes in disordered eating clients, so she has definitely given me a more balanced perspective on diet and health in general. Everything I'm saying today is backed by science, but to avoid overcomplicating a already very complicated topic, I'm going to try to keep this as basic and easy as possible. If you are looking for a perfect scientific approach to diet and exercise, I would highly recommend Jeff Nippard, or if you really love gay jokes, Mike Isertel, or if you want to go balls to the wall and do a complete lifestyle overhaul, Brian Johnson is a great content creator as well. Before we get into it, I would also like to add that most of this advice is for people who might be standard overweight. This video isn't really intended for somebody who's already pretty lean trying to get absolutely shredded, someone who might be prone to disordered eating, someone with an actual diagnosed medical reason as to why they might be predisposed to more weight gain, or somebody with physical disabilities. These groups are all definitely very capable of getting their dream physique, but that definitely requires somebody who's far more specialized and educated than I am. I would first off like to dispel some fitness myths, but before we even do that, we're gonna talk about the miracle drug that is Gamer Supps. Gamer Supps will put on 20 pounds of lean muscle mass and send you directly to 10% body fat. That is obviously a joke. Gamer Supps will do none of those things. I hope that was extremely obvious that was a bit. Gamer Supps simply offers delicious caffeinated or non-caffeinated beverages for you. Although Gamer Supps will not do any of the things that I mentioned at the start of this, caffeine will give you more energy to get better lifts, as well as temporary suppressing hunger. Or if you're like me and you're not super into caffeine, the caffeine-free versions give you a delicious sweet treat to help with some of those sweet tooth cravings. You guys can go pick yourself up anything from the Gamer Supps website. Using code COZY, you will get 10% off of anything. Thank you so much to Gamer Supps for supporting the channel as always. We appreciate you here. All right, back to dispelling some myths. I know when I was personally at my biggest, I seem to always have some sort of excuse as to why I was that way. From thinking it was down to my genetics, stress, maybe some undiagnosed health issue, or I would even hit the classic line of, I barely ate anything today, why am I not losing weight? So we are going to touch on all of those today. Before we do that though, I want to make sure that it is pretty clear that I am not demonizing obesity in this video. It is unbelievably easy to become overweight. In a world where you can ingest thousands of calories for just a few dollars, as well as our naturally sedentary lifestyles, it is just natural that a lot of us will put on body fat over the years. Being overweight does not mean that you should be ashamed of yourself, or does it mean that you're a lazy person. A lot of the time, it just sneaks up on us while we're busy trying to find where to place our piece in this incredibly complicated puzzle that is life. It is, however, also very important to take accountability. Ultimately, you are in control of your weight and your body, which means only you can change it. So let's talk about one of the biggest misconceptions, which is genetics are making you fat.
You know, I'm something of a scientist myself.
In a black and white sense, yes, it is actually true. Some people are just genetically more predisposed to gaining fat. I will not get into the full depth of it just on the basis of I'm nowhere near educated enough to fully explain it properly. All you really need to know from this is that for many reasons, genetics absolutely do dictate how you might hold weight. I mean, that part should be obvious though. We all seem to have that friend or family member who can eat literally whatever they want, however much of it they want, and they seem to put on absolutely no body fat. As much as we would all love to have that, unfortunately, most of us do put on body fat.
I am shocked. Shocked. Well, not that shocked.
Where the myth or misconception comes into this is that people think because they might be more genetically predisposed to holding on fat, that they are simply destined to be fat. But at the end of the day, no amount of genetics can overrun basic thermodynamics. No matter how shitty your genetics might be, if you eat at a steady calorie deficit, you will lose body fat. Yes, you will probably have a harder time, be more tired, and be hungrier than someone who is naturally lean or might have a higher metabolism. But I promise you that no matter how bad the genetics, if you trust the process and stick with it, you can absolutely get to where you want to be. The reason I bring this up is because I feel like a lot of people box themselves in before they even start. We'll say things like, that's just how I am, and spend a good chunk of our lives not being happy in our own skin. But everyone deserves to give themselves a fighting chance to be who they want to be. So keep your chin up and believe in yourself. Don't put yourself in handcuffs before you even get off the start line. Another common myth or misconception is that the type of calorie matters for losing fat. The very simple answer to that is no. If you're eating in a calorie deficit, it doesn't matter if every single calorie you eat comes from Twinkies. In fact, a professor of nutrition at Kansas State University proved just that. For 10 weeks, he ate 1,800 calories a day of nothing but Twinkies or similar junk food. The results are honestly pretty astonishing. In 10 weeks, he lost 27 pounds of fat. But that wasn't all. His bad cholesterol dropped by a ridiculous 20%, and his good cholesterol rised by 20%. I am obviously not recommending this diet for a lot of reasons, but the main point is that as long as you're eating in a calorie deficit and your only goal is to get lean, you can pretty much eat whatever you want. This kind of ties into my next point of fad diets.
Are you going to finish that croissant?
Throughout the years, there has been countless different hack diets to lose body fat. But the reality is, none of them have ever stuck around or have worked nearly as well as just simply eating as many whole foods as you can and staying in a calorie deficit. The reason I say to avoid them is not only are they typically not as effective, but they usually require you to make pretty big changes in the type of food you eat from day to day. Whenever you make something overcomplicated or try to make too many changes, it's usually far more difficult to stick to for a meaningful amount of time. So rather than trying out new fad diets, just try to eat as many whole foods as you can and avoid processed foods. They will typically net you far higher volume, making you far more satiated. This will also help support balanced nutrients, avoid restriction, and aid with fat loss by curbing hunger. The last myth or misconception that I want to touch on is targeted fat loss. There is no such thing as targeted fat loss. We are once again at the mercy of our genetics. We see ads absolutely everywhere that all have this tagline of lose belly fat with this one simple trick. You know what the simple fucking trick is? Stop eating like a chungus. Okay, that was obviously a joke. But the point is, there is no workout, no food, no pill, or anything that will make you lose fat in any one specific spot on your body. What you can do though, if there's a spot on your body that typically does hold more fat, if you simply add muscle to that area, the fat will look far better, and honestly, sometimes you'll just even look stronger than you are. Now onto my personal recommendations on how to lose fat in a healthy and sustainable way.
Call me asparagus.
I want to make it very, very clear that this is what worked for me. I would highly recommend doing your own research and trying your own things to figure out what works best for you, because there is no one single path to success. So please, while you're watching this, keep it in the back of your mind that health and fitness is not as black and white as I'm making it seem like it is in this video. So feel free to cherry pick advice from this video that you think would work well for you. All right, I'm gonna rip through these in my personal perceived order of importance. The very first thing, which actually might be surprising to some of you, is sleep. Sleep is the most absolute vital part of being a healthy human being. Every single facet of your life will be improved if you focus on getting 8 hours or more of sleep every single night. Your motivation, energy, recovery, cognitive performance, and even your hunger levels will be far better if you get a good night's sleep. When we're tired, our ghrelin levels are elevated. Ghrelin is a hormone released by our brain, intestine, pancreas, and most importantly, stomach. It's released by our stomach when it's empty, and it tells our hypothalamus that it is time to eat. The more you fight that feeling, the more carb and fat-rich foods that your brain will crave. Things like yo-yo dieting, dehydration, overconsumption of processed foods, and lack of sleep all increase the amount of ghrelin that our body produces, therefore making us more hungry and more likely to overeat. Sleep is also vital for staying committed to a healthier lifestyle. When you're overtired, the literal last things on earth you want to do are work out, meal prep, or really do any sort of activity. Even if you do convince yourself to do some sort of activities, you're going to be far less effective at pushing yourself, leading you to have slower progress and less motivation. So for my personal recommendation, for the first little while, I would recommend treating sleep like it's a job. Doing it on time is not something that you should look at as optional, and you shouldn't just be able to leave or do less of it because you'd rather be doing something else. I understand that that is far easier said than done though, so I will share some of the tips that have worked for me. I have personally had sleep issues basically my entire life. Things like insomnia, waking up 5 to 10 different times a night, not feeling rested, and the list just goes on and on. We have a full video on sleep actually coming relatively soon, so I won't get into too much detail, but what I will share is some things I integrated into my routine that might also work for you. Every night I like to set an exact chill time before bed. This is a time of night where I turn down or off all of the lights, I put my phone on do not disturb, I avoid using any social media, and I certainly don't do any work. This is an ideal time for you to read, watch a comfort show or movie, take a nice long shower or bath, or go for a quiet nighttime walk. Having this routine consistently will train your brain to know when this time of night hits, it's time to get ready for sleep. It's also important to avoid drinking before bed, as well as eating for 3 to 4 hours before sleep. A lot of people believe that eating before bed will make you fat, which is absolutely not true. So I'm telling you to avoid it for a different reason. The reason I'm saying to avoid it is because there's pretty much countless studies to show the effect that late night eating has on our body. Things like disrupting your circadian rhythm, delaying your melatonin onset, elevating your cortisol levels, and increasing inflammation. This doesn't mean that something like eating a handful of carrots before bed will do this to you, obviously, but you should definitely avoid eating any meals or large snacks 3 to 4 hours before you're going to sleep. You will also get some of the advantages of intermittent fasting while doing this, which has been linked to improved insulin sensitivity, better tissue recovery, better thinking and memory, lower resting heart rate, and overall more fat loss. There's so many benefits to sleep. As I said, it really needs its own video, but the key takeaway here is that you need to try your very best to try to get as close to 8 hours as you can every single night. From my personal experience, sleep deprivation is the death of motivation. I personally still struggle with my own rules of sleep. This isn't about being absolutely perfect. There'll be nights where you're doing important things, like hanging out with friends, family, or just playing video games with your friends. These things are all keys to our happiness just as much as being fit is. It's all about balance and trying to be as perfect as you can as frequently as you can, so that the days you aren't perfect, you can enjoy them guilt-free. Now on to the next one, and probably the most important one. Again, I would like to remind you guys that this is what worked for me and is not absolute. Everyone is different, so feel free to experiment and see what works best for you. But here is what I did. I'm gonna start this off by saying there's pretty much no such thing as a bad food. If it tastes good and it makes you feel happy, then it serves a purpose. Food throughout all of history has basically been the backbone of our social lives. Breaking bread with friends, family, or even strangers, and eating things that make us feel deeply satisfied are the cornerstones of being alive. So it is important to not villainize certain foods, but simply to understand them and balance them in a way that lets you achieve your goals while also enjoying your life. The best way I found for me is to track everything. For the first couple weeks, I ate what I would normally eat in a day and track all of it. Meals, sauces, oils, butters, drinks, fruits, vegetables, pretty much anything that I put in my body, I tracked. It was obviously annoying at first, but like all things, once you get used to it, it just simply becomes habit and you don't even think twice about doing it. You can pick from like countless apps to use. I personally use MyFitnessPal, but it is 100% up to you. I know it might seem odd to track literally everything because you can pretty much eat enough veggies to bankrupt a farm without having any real caloric issues, but for me, it was all about forming habits. This entire video is essentially about forming habits because motivation is temporary, habits are forever. Now that I was tracking everything, I bought a basic scale. You don't need anything special. Then I just ate how I normally would for a couple weeks, just making sure that I'm tracking it. I weighed myself at the very start of the first week, the end of the first week, and then the end of the second week. Assuming my weight didn't fluctuate much, that established my maintenance calorie baseline. Just to make sure you're not wildly off either, you can use something called a TDEE calculator. I'll link it in the description, but you can input your metrics to get a pretty good idea of your maintenance, cut, and bulk calories as well as your macros. Again, keep in mind nothing is black and white though, so just use it as a baseline. For this video's example, we'll use 2,500 calories as our maintenance. A lot of you may have heard that when you're losing weight, you should try to aim your calories for what the maintenance will be at your goal weight. Which, yes, in theory, that's great. But let's say you weigh something like 250 pounds right now, and your goal weight down the line is 180 pounds. That can be a maintenance calorie difference of 500 to 800 calories depending on your activity level. That is a massive calorie drop off, and will probably just cause more problems than it will solutions to eat that far below your maintenance right away. I personally set myself a pretty realistic and gentle goal of 150 to 300 calories below my maintenance for the first couple weeks. You have to remember that this is not a race. Even in this pretty small deficit, you'll probably feel pretty hungry and kind of groggy at first. Although it is super frustrating, try not to get too discouraged because your body will acclimate to the new calories pretty quickly. In this 2-week period, I highly prioritize getting protein in, then carbs, then fat. The golden number is 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. For me, this number is honestly kind of aggressive and pretty hard to achieve day to day. So I think if you aim for something like 0.7 grams per pound of body fat, you will be just fine. Another perk of trying to prioritize protein is that it will keep you full far longer than something like carbs or fat will. If you're able to space out 3 protein-rich meals over a few hours, it will definitely help to reduce your overall hunger. There is an absolute abundance of protein-rich snacks and drinks available, and although those are super helpful for trying to hit your macro goals, try to use them in addition to whole foods like beef, pork, chicken, fish, turkey, or whatever other protein you like, rather than using them as your main source of protein. The thing here is that yes, in theory, all calories are the same as I said earlier, but as you will learn throughout this process, eating McDonald's every day, even in a deficit, will definitely not make you feel very good, so I would not recommend doing that. So definitely make sure you're sticking with whole proteins and lots of veggies to help you get volume, as well as balancing your micronutrients, of course. You can find basically infinite recipes on Google, TikTok, Instagram, or according to my wife, Pinterest. There is a never-ending flow of healthy and nutritious recipes to make that actually taste good. This will also help you to learn how to cook if you don't know how already, or you can just be like me and kind of throw shit in a pan and air fryer and just kind of see what happens.
What are you?
An idiot sandwich.
Again, as I said earlier, there's nothing that's off limits per se, but in my humble opinion, you have to understand and set your own priorities. If you really want a full breakfast from McDonald's of a McGriddle, hash brown, and French vanilla iced coffee or something like that, then no problem. But understand that if you want to achieve your goals, starting your day with 1,000 calories doesn't exactly leave you a ton of food for the rest of your day. So if you plan on staying in a calorie deficit that day, when nighttime rolls around and your cravings are at their peak, you have to remember that the decision you made earlier is going to have its consequences later on. Sometimes you might deem it worth it, but a lot of the time when I find myself doing something like that on a cut, I end up wishing that I either would have just got one single item that matched my calories or just made something at home. Once I settled into a rhythm and learned how to cook every day or meal prep to save time and money, I decided that it was time to cut down on my calories again. I noticed a slight change on the scale, but it wasn't anything too substantial, mostly water weight from cutting out a lot of the excess carbs that I was eating beforehand. So this is when I decided to eat about 500 calories below my maintenance. So say my maintenance was at 2,500 calories, I was now eating 2,000 calories every day. This netted me roughly 1 pound of fat loss per week without making me too tired, hungry, or reducing too much of my muscle mass. If I noticed that my weight was not dropping despite being perfect, I personally cut back 100 calories more and checked back in a week. The flip side of this was that if I found myself losing more than 3 pounds in a week, I added 100 calories back into my diet. It's important to remember that this is about building sustainable, permanent change for you. I would not personally recommend doing a quick crash diet. If you cut too fast, you'll lose a lot of muscle mass, you'll have hormone issues, and you'll have a far higher chance of gaining it all back as soon as you're no longer on the cut. So take it easy and focus on staying healthy, not just getting leaner. This is where I'm gonna say something that I think is a little bit controversial. On my cut, there was no such thing as a cheat day. This didn't mean that I didn't go out every couple weeks or something like that, as long as I was staying super mindful of what I was eating. The idea of a cheat day to a lot of people just means throw caution to the wind and eat whatever they want, however much of it they want to. The reality is though, a cheat day like that can absolutely undo all the work that you just put in throughout the rest of your week, especially if those other days weren't perfect, which they probably won't be. So what I found worked best for me was to just lock the fuck in and to make 95% of my meals at home, or if I did go out, I ordered calorie conscious options or ate smaller portions. The best way for me to understand calories on my first cut was to equate it to something like a financial budget. If you have $50 to spend that day, but you know that you're gonna spend $30 at dinner, you're not really giving yourself a ton of money to spend throughout the rest of your day. You can approach this in a million different ways and find what works best for you, but that approach worked best for me. This brings me to my next couple points. A, it is okay to take breaks in your cut and eat at maintenance for a while. In fact, it's great for muscle recovery, mental load, metabolic calibration, and it lets you be a little bit more flexible with your meals and snacks for a bit. It also helps prevent a cycle of restricting then binging. This obviously doesn't mean you should eat the way you did before your cut, it just means to eat around your new maintenance. Once you feel satisfied and ready to tackle it again, establish your new maintenance and get back to work. My next point is there needs to be a realistic goal to attain as well as an end. Saying something like, I want a six-pack while you're 5'10" and 250 pounds might be a little bit out of reach. It's a great future goal for sure, especially with all you'll learn on this cut. But maybe setting a goal of something like 200 pounds while you're 250 makes a little bit more sense. This gives you lots of time as well as a realistic goal to achieve. The problem with setting a crazy goal isn't that it's not possible per se, but you gotta live life. You gotta drink with your friends and family, eat good food, and give yourself some breaks. There needs to be a point where you stop and feel proud of the progress that you've made. If you find yourself hitting that 200-pound goal and still feel extremely motivated to go further, great, but make sure that off rip you're giving yourself an actual attainable goal. Another way to do this, as suggested by my good friend Dean, is to set yourself something like micro goals. On top of your main goal to say hit 200 pounds, you should set yourself checkpoints like 240, 230, etc. Or it can be something like trying to eat as perfect as you can for a full month, or hit a new PR in your lifts or cardio. Honestly, any sort of achievement that you can hit to remind yourself that you are actually making progress and making good steps to reaching your ultimate goal. Alright, now let's talk about lifting shit up and running around like our ancestors did. I think it might come as a surprise to some people that this is on the lowest tier of importance to me. The reason it's down here is because I think a lot of people misunderstand how the gym and cardio work. I think a lot of people assume that if they overeat but hit a sick lift and a good cardio session, they'll be good to go. But there is just no reality where you can ever outwork a bad diet. Just adding cardio and lifting into your life without locking in your diet, you will definitely lose a little bit of fat, but you will absolutely hit a progress wall. That doesn't mean you shouldn't go to the gym though. You should lift and hit cardio for so many reasons. First, let's talk about lifting. Lifting weights will increase bone density, strengthen tendons, help prevent chronic diseases such as heart disease, arthritis, and body aches, reduce symptoms of depression and anxiety, increase your mobility and flexibility, live longer and extend your quality of life, and of course, more important than all of that, you will look sick as fuck with a shirt off. On top of all of that, as you gain more muscle, your resting metabolic rate will increase, which means you can eat more food while also losing fat, so it's a win-win. The gym can definitely be an intimidating place when you're new, and that's okay because at some point, all of us were new there at one point or another. The reality is though, 90% of the people that are in the gym are too busy worrying about themselves to even think or notice you. So take it easy and remember that whether it's you who are new or a trained bodybuilder that's been going there for years, you are both in there for the same reason, paying the same amount of money, and are entitled to the same equipment. So just have fun and do your thing. Don't worry too much about people around you. If you are new to lifting, I would definitely recommend an app like Fitbod that can help make you a workout plan as well as demonstrate how to lift safely. I would also highly recommend watching some people like Will Tennyson, Jeff Nippard, Lean Beef Patty, and of course C-Bum to see some ideal ways to maximize your time in the gym. Get in there 3 to 5 days a week and get your protein in, and you will be looking jacked and shredded in no time. Now on to cardio. It will help too reduce stress, anxiety, and depression, improve your sleep quality, reduce your resting heart rate by strengthening your heart. It will help you manage your cholesterol and blood pressure, increase your stamina and your energy. It even lowers your chances of certain types of cancer and Alzheimer's. Just like lifting, it will extend your life as well as the quality of your life. And of course, if used in combination with a good diet, will lose you some extra fat. As for cardio, just start off wherever you can. I personally started off doing 20 minutes of stair climber, but I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, so just kind of experiment and see what feels best for you. You definitely want to get yourself to a point where you're breathing heavier and can feel yourself working a little bit, but you don't exactly want to be mouth open gasping for air. So try to find a good balance. Between cardio and lifting, you want to shoot for around 1 hour of activity every day. Quick side note about cardio: to maximize your fat loss, recoveries, and sustainability, and just being overall easier on your body, I would shoot for LISS, low intensity steady state if cardio is pretty new for you, or MISS, moderate intensity steady state if you're a little more active. High intensity is great for if you're training for something specific or if you're very short on time, but overall it will be extremely exhausting to try to do on a day-to-day basis, as well as not really net you any massive improvements if your goal is to just lose fat. As for cardio though, my number one biggest recommendation that I could make is to try to find some sort of sport or cardio-based activity that you love doing. Try anything from basketball to flag football to hockey to spikeball, dodgeball, parkour for all I care. But find something that ignites a competitive spirit in you, something that makes you want to get better. You will completely forget that you're even doing cardio. And more importantly, it is never too late to try a new sport. There are pretty much countless leagues for any type of sport or activity with various skill levels. So get in there and change your life. Honestly, that pretty much sums up what I did. To close this out, do not ever beat yourself up for putting on fat. It is so damn easy to do, especially with our modern lifestyles, stress, genetics, work, and the fact that junk food just honestly tastes really fucking good. It is very easy for small mistakes to compound over years, and it's even harder to wake up one day and just change it. That being said, no excuse to yourself will ever make you feel better if you're not happy in your skin. We can blame whatever factors we want, but at the end of the day, you are the one in the driver's seat, and only you can prioritize your health. So take accountability and get to work if you don't feel very bonita about yourself. Don't start in January or cut for the summer or next week or next month or even tomorrow. Start right now because you deserve it. The most important part of this is to build lifestyle habits that will far outlast your cut. As I said before, motivation is a powerful tool, but motivation eventually fades. Habits you have built will be woven into the very fabric that makes you you. Keep in the back of your mind as well that this isn't a race, nor should you be comparing yourself to anyone around you. We all have our own journeys and paths to success. The only correct path to your goal is the one that works for you. This isn't about following my advice or really anybody else's perfectly. It's about making enough small changes that all compound into a better, healthier version of you. And when you do get to your goal weight, which you will have all the tools necessary to maintain whatever weight feels best for you. Just keep in mind though that there is more important things than having a six-pack for 365 days of the year. Socializing over dinner, having responsible beers or cocktails with your friends or family, and eating a family-sized bag of chips on the couch like a fat fucking chud are all key components to living a happy and healthy life. So find your own balance that helps you feel comfortable in your own skin while also doing all the things that make our heart feel full. And do not be afraid to fall back to square one. Every single time it happens, and it will, you will learn something new and be one step closer to feeling like a goddamn rock star. So keep your chin up, work hard, and just remember that if my dumb, lazy can do it, I promise you that you can too. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.